Hey there, welcome to the Lookout. We've gotten some requests to cover fires in Oregon, Western Oregon specifically. There's some lightning busts going on up there, and last couple of days, so there's some new fires, and so we're gonna take a quick look. This isn't going to be an in-depth report, just because we haven't had a whole lot of time to figure out ourselves what's happening up there, but we do want to cover areas outside of California when we can. Our focus is Northern California, but there's some, there's a lot of crossover between fires in California and Oregon, and the way they're fought. And always glad to take requests for special coverage if we can. We just have pretty limited capacity right now. It's me, and I got a little bit of help, but we try to cover what we can. So we're going to take a look at fires in Oregon. Specifically, we're going to look at the Tyee Ridge Complex, which is new in the last couple of days. It's the Cougar Fire, the Rattlesnake Ridge Fire, Tyee Mountain Fire, some other small starts near there that have been suppressed. We're also going to look at the Chilkoot Fire. We're also going to take a look at the Lookout Fire, which has been burning for quite a while now, but it's the Lookout, so how can we not cover the Lookout Fire? If you're just joining us and haven't seen us before, my name is Zeke Lunder, wildfire analyst based in Northern California. I've been working on mapping around wildfires, wildfire management, fuels management, forestry for my whole career, about 30 years. And used to go out and do this on fires, and now I don't. Now I do this in a little shed in my backyard, and that's the Lookout. So thanks for joining us. Hope we can give you some good info, and we'll jump right in to our live map here. So what we like to do is we take intelligence from public sources, heat satellites, infrared that's flown by the National Fire Center. We have our own kind of collection of data of where fires have happened in the past and other stuff like that, and we talk over it. So anyway, these fires we're talking about, a little bit north and west of Roseburg, is the Tyee Ridge Complex. Roseburg's kind of in the center here, and we look out to the east. Here's Crater Lake up here. So we're going to look at the Chilkoot Fire, and we're going to look at the Lookout Fire, which is kind of more straight out the 126 up the McKenzie River from Eugene. One thing we talk a lot about on this show is just historic fires and how they affect subsequent fires. So as we, and we don't see any big historic fires in the last, 20 years or so around the Cougar Creek complex or the Tyee Ridge complex. There are big fires out by the Chilkoot Fire up from Glide. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first we're going to start off here with Cougar Creek. This complex is just kind of in its fairly incipient stages, just started in the last couple of days. And so we don't have a lot of real detailed mapping yet from the National Fire Center. Haven't seen any infrared yet for this, but it's burning basically in this in checkerboard landscape. When we talk about checkerboard, we talk about alternating sections owned by the Forest Service or BLM and private landowners. And next time we do this report, we'll have some mapping that shows that checkerboard. Basically, we've got Sutherland out here, and then the little town of Umpqua. This is the Umpqua River, headed to the coast, and these fires are up on top of the ridge, and that's what we see often with lightning fires, is they start on top of the mountain for the most part, and they back their way down. And so sometimes we get fire effects from those that we like. They're beneficial in that when they back downhill in larger timber, oftentimes they don't kill every tree. The problem with lightning fires this time of year is we know that from 3 years ago, beginning of September, we start to have the potential for really strong east winds. And so having all this fire in the landscape is really nerve-wracking, because we do have this potential that if these fires get blasted by strong east winds, they're going to head west in a big way. So we don't have a whole lot of information on the tactics. One thing that these fires have going for them that we don't have going for us, say down in the Clamath where we've been covering, is just extremely good access. Lots of contractors, lots of folks nearby who know the ground, a lot of loggers that can come out here in a hurry. If you're watching this from California, one thing that Oregon does differently is that the forestry industry pays for fire suppression, and there's a real tight coordination between the logging contractors, the major timber companies, and the Oregon Department of Forestry. California also has contractors, and they come out and support CDF, or California Cal Fire now. But there's a longer history of collaboration and a real tight integration between Oregon Department of Forestry and the timber industry. And so that really makes a massive difference when you have fires on this land that's protected by the Forest Protective Associations. So you can expect a different outcome here than you'd see in the Clamath, where we really don't have access. We don't have really good dozerable ground. Better access here, we'll see a different outcome. Just to kind of come in and look at these in a little more detail as we talk about like them being on the top of the hill. You can just see that, you know, the fire that starts on the top of the hill here, it can back downhill slowly, but it doesn't have the potential to run up the hill quickly. So that's what we have so far on Rattlesnake Ridge. They'll probably fly that with infrared, and tomorrow we might have a better perimeter for that. These squares, like you see, there's a little dot in the center, and the square basically tells you like there could be heat somewhere in this square. The satellite's way out there in the cosmos, and it tells you, well, there's heat somewhere within this 1 kilometer area, you know, about 1,000 yards. So we like to take this stuff with a grain of salt. You see a dot down here, and it shows the fire that's like on top of this house. That very likely is not happening at all. And sometimes they'll tell you like, okay, the confidence that this is actually here is 16%. So if you are, you know, looking at online fire maps and stuff, and you see, you know, a dot way on the other side of the road or somewhere nowhere close to where you think the fire is, oftentimes it's inaccurate. So don't let kind of random heat maps that you see on the internet scare you, or start spreading rumors that, oh, the fire crossed the road, I saw a heat dot over there. Because oftentimes, you know, we don't like to really attribute any accuracy to these unless we have, you know, some other source of intel to back it up. But when a fire's just getting started like this, you know, we like it because we can start off at this landscape scale and say, hey, where's the fire? And it's good for that. Come up here north of Drain, on the road from Drain to Reedsport, there's a fire here that they're calling Big Tom. And other than these heat dots, we don't really have any intel on this fire yet either. But that's it's out to 38, and right now from Drain, seven miles to the northwest. One thing we don't see a lot of in this country is we don't see fires oftentimes making big runs to the southeast. You know, we worry about, like we said, fires coming, the winds coming out of the east and blowing fires to the west. So, you know, if you're out to the west of a fire right now, you kind of have a different exposure and should have a different awareness and kind of alertness than necessarily, like if you're here in Curtin, not huge odds that this fire is going to race, you know, 10 miles to the east overnight or anything like that. But there is precedent here in Oregon, usually a little later in the year, for fires making big runs out to the west. So I want to talk a little about fire history. These blue polygons and these different colors, these are historic fires that we've had recently. So this is the Archie Creek fire, and that burned in 2020, 130,000 acres. And most of you who, if you were up there, you know that a lot of that happened in the course of one kind of terrible night. What that means for us when we look at fires like this one on the landscape is once you start to get kind of out of the clear cut pattern and onto a lot of the clear cut really tells you where a lot of the private land is, more than anything else. This fire is contained already in some ways on two sides by these other recent fires. We've got the Rough Patch fire that burned in 2021 and this Archie Creek fire that burned in 2020. Fires don't spread usually as quickly in recent burns. They can still spread plenty fast because you've got grass and ferns, but they don't burn with the same intensity kind of right off the bat because a lot of the fuel's been reduced. One thing we kind of talk a lot about is like, well, how long does it take? Oh, something happened to my camera. Sorry for the rainbow stripes here. There we go. So after some time, this fire with all the dead trees and the brush and the grass will carry fire just fine, and you'll have a lot more fuels. But kind of as we look around the landscape, we're all kind of thinking about like, okay, well, what's in the big picture going to affect how big this fire has potential to get, and if it's got recent fires on three sides of it, oftentimes we'll say, hey, we're not as worried about this one here moving out. We're not worried about this fire moving south and threatening Glide because we've got all this burn between it. Doesn't mean it's not going to burn in there, but it's not the same as having solid timber for 130,000 acres. You got grass, you got ferns, you got salvage logging, a lot of stuff going on here that's gonna change the fire behavior. So we're gonna pop up here to Bedrock fire, just coming by real quick. Bedrock's been burning for a long time. A lot of you have been suffering with that smoke and anxiety of it. It's kind of just shrunk down, and we see these yellow dots are kind of scattered heat, but it's kind of done. Coming up to Lookout. Lookout's been going for a long time, and it's not done. And so what we've got here, I'm going to turn off the heat satellite, because one thing, they flew this fire last night with infrared. And so the white line is the fire line from the day before yesterday, night before last. And then the new growth, you can see outside that white line, is what they are flying today. I haven't been following this one closely enough to know, like, when you see these big jags, oftentimes that means that the person looking at the infrared was dodging clouds, or they had sensor issues where, they got these planes up there scanning the fire, and weird things happen, the way that they get the imagery, and then an interpreter has to kind of look at it and try to figure out what's real and what's not. So I can't really say anything about what's going on in here, except that the perimeter they posted for the night before last was here, and it shows that the fire back down towards the McKenzie River, this fire in this area. And this edge that's not the white line is kind of the fire growth. So you can see that kind of from around McKenzie Bridge up a mile or so, it's showing no new spread. This white line is showing no new spread according to the data I'm interpreting. Doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means that the mapping they had from the night before last and the mapping they had from last night shows no spread here. There is spread kind of out here to the north. Where are we at? North of Rainbow, north of Blue River. Then we've got the Holiday Farm fire here in blue. And so kind of the same deal. Like, we're not that worried. Lookout's been going for a while. We're not that worried about anything out, Nimrod, Finrock, Vida, really being threatened by this fire, just because you've had so much fuel reduction in that Holiday Farm fire. Anyway, some spread here on the north end of Lookout. These red dots are kind of hot spots. And other than that, we're just kind of jumping in here. We don't have a lot to tell you about what we know about this place. I know this area pretty well because my uncle lives up there, but I haven't been following this fire. So since we're just kind of starting off our coverage of these fires, as we have time, and if California doesn't get too crazy here, we'll keep coming back, Lees, and we'll get a little more familiar with it. But right now, we can't really tell you that much. We don't, I don't have a real solid understanding. What this mapping from last night's showing is that when you get up kind of towards where the highway turns at Belknap Springs, the fire kind of made some slope-driven runs up on these steep slopes. So like I said, we're not real appraised of what their box is for containing this fire, but it's tough ground. There's some new heat showing here. The Horse Creek fire. We don't really know much else about that, except that it's all this heat that it's showing on the infrared is intense or scattered heat, meaning that it's kind of recently been actively burning. So that's burning just kind of right on the doorstep, the back door of McKenzie Bridge, but uphill. And it's kind of burning on the back side of this ridge. That's about all we got right now. I was going to zoom out to see if there's anything going on out in eastern Oregon. I mean, the fire history does tell a story just about how much fire we've had. Let's see. All right, I'm going to look at the feed real quick, just see if we got questions here about Oregon fires. Let me jump back over here. Hey, everyone. Glad you joined us, by the way. Someone says they picked blackberries back in there. They're sad it's all got fire retardant. Yeah, man, the fire retardant definitely harshes the jelly making. All right. Well, if you want to, if you have anything to say, leave a comment. We'll try to, like I said, we'll try to get back and keep covering Oregon. Things have been a little crazy in California, but you know, as things settle, maybe we'll get a little more bandwidth. I'm just going to jump down here real quick. If there's anyone watching who's a Californian, I was just going to turn on some of the mapping we got here for Smith River Complex. Heat satellite's pretty mellow right now. Doesn't mean nothing's happening. Just they don't refresh that often. But what was interesting this morning was to open this up and see that there have been some firing operations going on around Gasky. So the detailed IR shot last night, just you can kind of see a snapshot of them starting to. They put a dozer line up from the power line corridor here, Pacific Power. They ran a dozer line up and then came down this ridge, and they were starting to fire that last night. And so you can see that they'd lit along the top and carried fire down. And basically what they're trying to do here is get this burn out this side of the canyon before the rest of this fire that's all up here makes its way down. And it's hard to tell, you know, I see like on this, it's hard to tell if that's a slop or if they, you know, where they drove the dozers. It's kind of steep ground. That's the thing with this infrared. You get kind of a point in time and you can kind of start to think you know what's going on, and then, you know, a few hours later there might be a totally different picture here. Someone says they learned how to swim in Gasky. I used to snorkel up there with my uncle, and it was cold. It was the clearest water I'd ever been in, but you couldn't stay in very long. But it was pretty amazing being able to see the trout. Oh, man. So many fires, so much data. I'm going to jump over here real quick. This morning, so they've gotten a little better at capturing some infrared last couple days. Looking at the SRF lightning complex now. So we started off in Oregon. Now we're in Northern California. We're kind of near the town of Orleans, which is the center of the universe. Soames Bar actually is the center of the universe for a lot of folks. It's where the Salmon River and Clamath come together. Wichipec down here. We got Highway 96 running from Willow Creek up to Wairika, and we're kind of, you know, near kind of northwestern corner of California. So they've had a lot going on with the fires, but a lot of them aren't doing a lot, behaving themselves a bit. So on the Mosquito here, folks have been kind of trying to herd this fire along inside the roads. We've been kind of watching as they've carried fire over the last week out these road systems, trying to keep ahead of the fire, and they've kind of boxed it in pretty well. You can see there's no heat here showing the meaning that it's cooling off. Yellow is all kind of cooling off. Red's active. We've been wondering if they'd be able to hold it at this ridge. I think the rain has really helped them out, subdued a lot of the fire behavior. So far, mosquito is behaving itself pretty well. Bluff fire also, a lot of work been done on this fire to kind of put fire on the ground strategically along these roads and kind of try to keep the fire basically from heading to the east. Blue Creek Fire has kind of made a run up and over, maybe potentially over the Go Road. The Go Road runs the ridge here. Not clear if that's happened, but it's not out of the question that at some point the blue Sorry, technical difficulties here. Got it. Someone says, can't see the map. Got to look at the comments once in a while. How long has that been going on? Sorry, folks. Can't see the map. Well, I'm glad you can see me at least. And then lost that too. Live streams. All right. This is just a warm-up. Y'all get to see it twice. I'm trying out a new camera, and so that's the rainbow stripes. I'm going to have to bail out here and fix my camera or something. Okay, well, anyway. Jesus. Lots of talking. Surprised anyone's still watching. All right. Anyway. So they fired out around Gasky on the ridge here where they have dozer line. Carried fire up and down this ridge where they've dozered and doused it with retardant, and hopefully that's going well. This was about 20 hours ago. So we'll check that in the morning, see how well the firing went. Like we said there, they're just trying to keep ahead of the rest of the fire. So white line is where it was night before last. Yellow is where it was this morning on infrared. So you can see it's kind of marching its way down towards Gasky. It's kind of marching its way slowly downhill towards Darlingtonia. Backing fires can be good fire. Some places it's not going to kill all the trees. And just like everywhere else, we're worried about east winds and other strong winds kind of eventually coming to this land that's full of heat and flaring things up. But right now, not much heat out here in the Biscuit fire, reburn areas at all. Fire did spread on the north towards O'Brien a bit. This you can see new spread out in here. Over here, it's a little harder to tell what happened because the mapping the night before last was pretty poor with clouds and everything else. But just to orient you, we're looking south, kind of from up by O'Brien. Here's O'Brien. Fire's kind of crossed over into California, and it's made some decent runs out in there. There's some fire out quite a ways ahead. And we don't have much intel on what the strategy is here, but we know that they want to box it in. Probably, oftentimes we'll use the same fire line, so probably reopen the dozer lines here that held the Biscuit fire. You can see the Biscuit in here. This is a Slater fire, and so that burned in 2020. So like we said before, this whole side of this fire, kind of around 199, is fairly contained by that old fire. We don't see this fire pushing hard into the Slater burn. So be interesting to see what the box ends up being here to kind of tie in this fire to the Slater and into the Biscuit burn being this light area that's all covered with grass. So good thing my camera crapped out. Good thing my map crapped out, because otherwise I wouldn't have taken care of you folks up in O'Brien. So hope that was helpful. Not a lot of heat here in the hurdy-gurdy or island fires. Some of these fires are unstaffed. They're in the wilderness. Let's see if we can. There's your wilderness in green, bright green. So the wilderness fires have been a little lower priority. As we come down towards Orleans, we're kind of west of the mouth of the Clamath River and kind of near, kind of between Happy Camp and the coast. Kind of between Happy Camp and Oric, if you know your northwestern California geography. Mosquito. We talked about it a little without the map, but they're doing their best to kind of keep this fire. They don't want this fire to burn out here to Orleans. Down in here, it's about, I don't know, 7 or 8 miles away. Where's the ruler? 8.5 miles. So they've been kind of working on filling in the gaps here, firing off these roads. We've said we'd be kind of amazed if they can hold it on this road. So far, so good. They've had some nice they got some rain, had some higher humidities. Good stuff. The bluff fire over here, same story. They're kind of hurting with the roads. It's got a little more potential on the backside, burning into the wilderness here. Lost fire over here showing a lot of heat still. It's burning in fairly dense forest, and it's taking a long time to cool off, but parts of it are cooling off. They've fired along the roads here. This is in Redwood National Park. Lost is looking good. Don't have a lot of intel coming from that. It's kind of been a lower priority. There's not a management team on it. It's being managed by a Type 3 team, which is kind of a local organization. And so we don't get kind of the same level of information on that fire as we're getting on these other ones that have a team assigned. Perch Creek fire above Orleans. This is we've been paying close attention to this one because we've been working over here for years. My day job is doing prescribed fire training and planning work, and we've done a lot of work over here with the folks that live here. There's a lot of folks that live out here in the brush, especially right here at the bottom of Perch Creek. It's Perch Creek neighborhood. So there's been a lot of kind of mutual aid going on here with the community members coming out and chipping and cutting. And there's a strategy in place to bring fire down this ridge system. There's been a ton of work being done in the last about 10 days with getting this plumbed and a line installed. And so if conditions allow, they're planning to bring fire down this ridge and also to use a drone to bring fire back down off this ridge to gain depth in there. Folks had quite a bit of practice doing that in this country in the last few years, and last year on the SRF complex in Willow Creek. It's pretty good outcomes of lower intensity fire. So they want to hold it in here. Early on in this fire, we really didn't think that they'd probably be able to hold it on top of this ridge. But the weather has cooperated. This fire's kind of moved in fits and starts, and they got some rain. So Perch is tough. It's just really crazy tough ground. Our friend Anna writes the division on this, and it's nice because Anna spent a lot of time over here helping us run these trainings and being part of the community here around fire. And so it's always nice when there's this kind of long-established relationships and trust between the folks that come from out of the area to manage a fire here and the folks that live here and have seen lots of things go wrong in their lifetime around putting fire on the ground or running dozer lines through sacred sites or other things. So in the course of my career, we've seen this lot tighter integration between the tribes, the locals, and the teams that come from out of the area, just in trying to do the right thing and really use that local knowledge. So shout out to Will Harling over there who gave me a call and kind of gave me an update on the plan. And we'll see what happens there. Got a friend who's evacuated who was in town yesterday here in Chico to get out of the smoke, and really appreciate our the information we get from our friends up there. So if you're watching and got photos or anything you want to share, and we're trying to cover this as much as we can. So yeah, if you're just tuning in, we're not we're in Northern California now. We kind of looked at the Oregon fires earlier on. Another thing that's a little bit concerning up here in the Clamath, a new fire. It's the Hancock fire. This is on Woolly Creek. So Clamath River, Salmon River, Woolly Creek, and lightning started a new fire called the Hancock here. If we look at our fire history, you can see that the Hancock's burning in this area. This had a lot of different fires. This land has had a huge amount of fire. And so this blue area burned. It's wrapped all the way around here in blue that burned in 2021. So the fire is kind of already contained on this side, and it's going to burn out this chunk here. Has some area out in here where it can get into that hasn't burned for a long time, and then it gets into areas that burned in 2017. So we talk a lot about the puzzle of fire history and how these fires fill in the pieces of the puzzle that haven't burned. And that's why these fires over here have been a concern, is just that the this area is about 150,000 acres that hasn't had fire since these red blobs out here burned in like the 1920s. Coming up the river from Orleans up towards Happy Camp, we got the Elliott fire. Elliott merged with another fire. Can't remember right off the top where that is, but we've got the Swillop fire here. Elliott's kind of spreading up the drainage. There's some work that's being done here, firing around an inholding, private property, that kind of protected that piece. But there is potential that this fire is going to kind of run with the terrain and merge up with Swillop. There's some firefighting going on here, but a lot of this ground here, early on in these fires, they didn't have the resources to really start what they'd call the big box firefight. And so since the beginning, there's kind of been an assumption that this fire, the Elliott, could grow out here into Dillon Creek. For days, it's been kind of holding here at Dillon Creek and hasn't crossed, and it is cooling off. So there's potential that it might hold there at Dillon Creek, which would make a lot of people really happy, because they know that once fire is well established out in here, it's going to burn until it rains. Coming up the river towards Happy Camp, got the U-Fish and Malone fires. U-Fish has just kind of been chunking along, kind of unsuppressed directly because it's in this incredibly kind of steep, difficult, dangerous terrain. There's a big box that's been built for this fire that kind of comes up out from up by Happy Camp, follows this ridge system. The Malone fire is it's got kind of some lines that are a ways off of it. But this area also burned in 87 and burned in 2014, and it burned in 2021. One question a local friend had for me was, or just wanted me to mention, is that, bring up something here. You got U-Fish here and Malone, and they're basically contained on the south by the 2021 McCash fire. And right now we've got firefighters out working on fire lines out in here to keep this fire out of McCash. Like we said, a lot of times the same fire line gets used over and over because it's the only place you can drive a bulldozer or really realistically insert crews. And so my friend who lives over, his question is like, well, why keep it out of McCash? It's like, it's going to go in there. There's some grass. It could burn it up. It could burn up some of the dead and down from the McCash fire. But what's the worry? Like, it's not like the U-Fish fire is going to get in here and it's going to spread 200,000 acres or burn the whole McCash footprint. This fine fuel only is really flammable, for a portion of the day. At night when the humidity comes up, or in the morning, it won't even burn. So I think that's a fair question of why bother to keep the fire out of this ground that just had fire, and more fire's not going to really hurt it. James Evans, weapons fire from above. Dues. James, dude, you want to get on my feed and talk about lasers, space lasers and shit? Like, I'm gonna block you. I don't want to deal with clicking block this guy. So if you just can stop writing shit about space lasers, it'll save me having to block you. But that's horse shit. Space lasers aren't a thing. And if anyone tells you space lasers are a thing, they're a fucking idiot. All right. Anyway. Yep. How do I feel about that? All right. Lost my train of thought. Thanks, dude. All right. Well, head fire. Got some heat left in the head fire. The red is all done, basically. And the yellow is just where it's scattered heat. We haven't seen a lot of spread on this fire. Got a lot of rain here. It's burning in areas that have burned recently. Doesn't mean it's completely done, but doesn't have a lot of potential. The reason for that is these recent burns. This burned last year. This burned 7 years ago. This burned 9 years ago. Headfire's not really going anywhere. All right. Cynthia Williamson also believes in space lasers. I don't want to have anything to do with his channel, me, I guess, because evidently you don't want to hear the truth. And I'm a programmed sheeple. You are, dude. Ouch. All right. Yep. Block that fool. Cynthia Williamson wants to know, did I personally see the fire start from lightning? Too many coincidences going on here. Huh. Yeah, I think fire's complicated enough without space lasers and conspiracies. So that's enough. Thanks, everyone. Pretty ridiculous. Q is calling, says John. Thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow's Sunday morning. Been getting up too early. I usually get up early to see if there's much going on. If there's nothing that's earth-shattering, I'm gonna sleep in. I'm glad we can help folks out. We can't promise we'll be on every morning, but we'll be on when we can. So thanks for your interest, and we appreciate your support. If you want some Lookout merch, cool hats, cool shirts, check out our website, lookout.org. If you like this stuff and want to be a supporter, you can, on our website, you can find a link to become a PayPal subscriber. And we appreciate it. It helps us. It really helps me be able to take time off work to do this stuff. So thanks a lot. And if you're out there around fires,